You're looking at one of them right here. I'm one of them, and then we basically have two other people here that we think it's fun to, and we learn some from. Again, we have our network pretty protected here. We have a fiber.
Welcome to Emphasis Tech Talks, the podcast for business leaders navigating technical challenges to find a competitive advantage and elevate your bottom line. Hey, today we have Ernie DeLany, owner of Probes Unlimited. Hey, Ernie, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Awesome. Hey, can you give us just a real quick, like an elevator pitch about the company and what you all are doing?
Yeah, we're actually a manufacturer of what we call OEM sensing devices, which basically means we make sensors that go into all kinds of equipment, from anything from food service equipment, aerospace. We also do a lot in scientific instrumentation. And then as of late, we're doing more and more in basically providing sensors that then get connected to the internet. So IoT would be that market, as well as green energy too.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to ask that about the IoT. So you are feeding data directly to systems that are going to be using that data for analytical purposes and other purposes, right?
Correct. We work with a number of companies that are in different industries. And part of that is also people automation. Gathering of the data in the past has been done lots of times by somebody walking around with a clipboard, visiting, a fridge. Like in the hospital automation section, the FDA requires that all pharmaceuticals, blood products, plasma, and biopharmaceutical products are all held to specific temperatures that they need to collect and show at least once an hour that where that material is stored is held to within a certain temperature. So we make some sensors that basically measure the temperature, connect to a device, and then that is then uploaded to the cloud. Most of the companies we work with are more software companies, so they know how to basically manipulate the data, display it, and then they've done some other very unique things, like each one of our sensors has to be calibrated once a year. So they'll actually have the calibration certificates available online. So they'll go into a hospital system and they'll say, hey, everything that you have to monitor from a critical standpoint, we can provide a service that basically gives you this data and feeds it to the folks at the hospital so that they know if they have an issue with a vaccine that was kept at improper temperatures. And then, of course, during COVID, we also saw a lot of growth in the actual supply chain, getting the material to the hospitals also. So again, we're kind of hardware guys behind folks that are very good with software. And we basically connect our sensors to those devices, and it gives people data so they can make decisions on how to handle things.
Yeah. So the actual functionality of reading the temperature, that's an analog function, right?
Correct.
And then, so do you convert it to digital, or are you just providing that? And okay.
We make probe assemblies that will basically do the actual temperature reading, take the analog signal. In most cases, it's usually a resistance value, do the conversion to a temperature reading, and then we convert it into a digital format. And there's a bunch of different methodologies to send it. One of the fairly common ones is Texas Instruments protocol, one wire, SPC. You can also send it RS-485. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can get the data uploaded. And then depending on the applications, there's a bunch of different devices that you can connect to depending on how concerned the customer is about infiltration, possibly opening up a door where somebody could basically hack into their system. So we are seeing a number of these guys beginning to use things like LoRaN which are devices that can transmit up to 1.5 miles. They'll actually mesh together. And then when they find a connection to the internet, they'll basically send the data back through that internet portal, and then it gets up to the cloud and then can be distributed out from there.
Yeah, managing endpoints today is really becoming quite the thing with all of the hacking endeavors that are out there in the wild wild web, as they say. So, is your customer base primarily U.S. or international?
We have customers. About 15% of what we're currently doing is outside the U.S. at this point. So we are seeing some of these monitoring services pop up in various different industries. We're seeing like different holes where there may be opportunity. Again, a lot of this stuff is to make employees much more efficient. Because it's no secret, it seems, at least in the U.S., there's some difficulty hiring people. So the people you have to figure out a way of making them more efficient without making them work extra hours.
Well, and presumably more accurate too. I mean, if you don't have someone manually entering something, then normally you're going to get more accurate information if that's a systematic way of getting that information. So so to dig down into the technical weeds just a little bit, let's maybe talk about debouncing. So my experience with these types of sensors, not necessarily your brand or anything, but with these types of sensors, is that sometimes with the analog, it's sitting there and it's wavering back and forth between, that one fine decimal point of value. Is that so? Do you normally debounce that, or does that for your consumer to take care of once they get it?
Most of the time on our devices, what we'll do is we'll scan the device up to 5 times a second, and then we present the average. And then that's how most people will do it. Or if they have sometimes if it's a battery powered device, it'll sleep for a bit, and then you can set up the scanning rates on it. So if you want to read every 15 seconds, it wakes up, it scans for 2 seconds, and then basically it'll give you the average reading. And I believe a lot of times when we write our software, we'll throw out the high and the low and then give the average.
I've done some of that where, we were trying to manage those kind of values. So everything that you're talking about is very familiar with what we've had to do when we were just getting the stream of data, just like every second or whatever the case may be when you're working with that raw analog data. So, wow. So you're transmitting a lot of data, but it's, in my terminology, thinking about data structures, I wouldn't think of it as being very wide, probably fairly narrow, meaning you've got some identifier for that device and then you've got the value, right?
Right. And it's a very minimal amount of data to read from these things. Doesn't require a lot. It's not like you're sending a video or anything like that. It's very raw. We use sometimes when we're trying to plug in, we use a program called, I want to say it's not Nord. It's, there's software out there that you can basically buy to scan Bluetooth devices and then actually see the values. So when we're testing things, we'll actually look at that. And it's interesting. It's just, a parentheses and usually 5 digits, 4 digits, and that's all you're getting. So you're not really sending much. And that's why, kind of Bluetooth and several other things kind of work for us. LoRaN also works because, again, you're not trying to broadcast the data. You're just sending, very small packets when you're uploading it.
Kind of thinking about our audience base here, and we have generically different business groups watching and tuning in here. So I'm thinking can you give us some ideas of your customers and how they're using this data? I mean, obviously, I know you're talking about compliance reporting. You already mentioned that. But what are some other use cases, and how does that blend into kind of the broader data view for some of your customers?
Sure. So I mean, you do have the hospital automation. Again, you're basically replacing the guy walking around with a clipboard looking at all the fridges every hour. So there's a pretty straightforward need there. Often they'll actually add some other things to this, and we have different customers that offer different services. In the case of where you have a fridge going in food service and some other locations where you may have a lot of valuable materials stored in a fridge, they'll not only just be reading the temperature inside of that cold location, but they'll also be reading the energy draw of the compressor. And basically, most compressors will start drawing more energy when the compressor's about to fail. So again, they can do preventative maintenance, preventative maintenance, and prevent an issue where you have a fridge go down and you lose $80,000 worth of product. So again, a lot of these monitoring services enable you to basically have a tighter grip on what's going on. And there's even been applications where some of the restaurant brand owners have successfully fought litigation where somebody said that they got food poisoning, and these monitoring systems will actually show that the product was held at the correct temperature. It went in the oven. They'll piece it together with video because they also have video. A number of the operators will actually have a security control center so that if somebody walks out of a restaurant in the middle of the night and leaves an oven on, they can actually turn the oven off from a different location. So again, it enables people to operate at a much higher level, prevent mistakes, and achieve profitability. Again, there's got to be a return on investment on just about everything. If you're adding, we actually did an RPI application here where our accounts receivable and accounts payable are actually being handled by an AI computer robot now. So our vendors actually email to an email address. It comes in, and basically a robot handles matching that invoice to a packing list and basically posting it to a payable. So there's all kinds of opportunities with these things. You just need to figure out what the return on investment is going to be and how it's going to kind of move you forward.
Yeah. So as you were telling that about, the monitoring and so forth, made me think of how, today there's a big push to tell a story with data. And so what you were talking about is being able to take your sensor data along with maybe some other sensor data along with video and being able to piece together that story. And often I'm finding that that's where the real value comes. And like you're talking about, the ROI. So one piece of information is almost never enough. You often have to bring those different pieces together to make it all work. It sounds like you're doing a great job of being an integral part of that. So talk to me a little bit about your team. So how big is your organization? Okay. And we often talk about teams on here and managing in both acquiring and retaining that talent pool. Do you have any kind of suggestions for our audience about how to acquire the type of talent that you need and being able to retain that talent?
Well, I think we're pretty transparent is one of the things that we kind of get to this. Like I have a call coming up later on this evening with a potential new candidate for our facility down in Florida. And again, we just try to be straightforward. Hey, this is how we kind of do things. We kind of call it the PUI way, and we're just straightforward. let them know what the expectations is, how we are driven by data. Because even in our operation, we're collecting data and it's live on a daily basis. So every production cell that's running, we actually once an hour they post what they actually completed. So that information's live and actually shared up on our Google Cloud that the company has. And we actually wrote software so that we can actually we don't have any paperwork anymore. Everything is done without paper. Everybody has an iPad in the cell. When the next job comes up, they look at the iPad and it has basically the work order and the work instructions. So again, we always try to improve a little bit every year. So I think that by offering incentives, meaning cash or a piece of the action as we improve, we find that helps. Rewarding people that do a good job, where we find, our organization runs fairly well. What I would say is probably most people's organizations, you can't just go in there and say, aha, it's this one thing that's creating the issue. Everybody tends to die from 1,000 cuts, a little cut here and there. We've gotten pretty good at looking at our data and basically listing 10 things that we want to work on. That we know that we'll get the most return on. And then from there, we kind of work down that list and then we reconvene and we say, okay, we killed the list of 10. What's the next 10 things that are going to help us get better? So it's constantly reviewing that. And I think that to some degree, I think that creates a culture where you don't come to work and get bored. You're going to be challenged every day. It's not going to be the same old thing. So what tends to happen is that people that come in that maybe don't have the right personality or the right fit, or they're just trying to come in and they're not like bought in, it becomes pretty obvious quickly for us. And we just move on and we try to find the right person then.
That's the way I like for our employees to work as well, to get engaged and have some ownership, and so awesome points. Thanks for sharing that. So being a manufacturer, and you mentioned this a little bit while you were talking, it made me think of this topic, but your internal data. So we've done a lot of work with several different manufacturers over the years, and obviously a lot of internal data about the process and, bills of material and so on. You sound like, you're a data guy, right? So, are there any key points that you can share with us about how you're using data, where you think you may be doing it a little more uniquely than maybe some other manufacturers? How are you leveraging that internal data that you have?
Well, first of all, we have a very good database program that basically there's a platform on it that runs. It's a pervasive SQL database. So we have a platform that runs on that's very gave us the flexibility to structure it to our operation. So as you can imagine, we currently build almost 2,300 different parent parts. And we build that from some 40,000 different components. So again, everything has to be very organized from the standpoint of you need to know what your orders are, what components are going to move, how to basically get those components to the people that are ready to assemble them. So the data in the database is very important that is kept in a certain way. So we have the structure to do that. And again, I think it enables us to probably have a smaller amount of a lot of manufacturers might have more levels of people controlling what's going out on the floor. Because we believe in computers and in the software, we're able to get one person to do the thing that maybe it would take 4 other people to do at another manufacturer. So again, that drops to, and again, that's our philosophy. We bought into the lean enterprise system probably almost 20 years ago. And it's a journey, and you continue on that journey. And part of that is basically leveraging software, leveraging data, because you can't make decisions if you don't have the data or if you don't have good data. So again, we're constantly reviewing, what data we need. Is it good? And then how to respond to it.
So is this so the platform you're talking about, is that a custom something that you've built specifically or had built for your operations?
We had been working with the company. The software program's actually called Evo ERP. And we basically customized it to work with us. We're pretty versed in how the database works, to the point that we're using Google to query the database so that we can get all the work orders and everything and connect them through custom software that we wrote in Google. And basically it's a complicated Google Sheets that does that. We just kind of coded it and got it to work and said, okay, we're just going to implement this throughout. We don't want paper down on the floor. Of course, you run into other issues like as we kit the job, you need so many components. We realized that when you didn't have paper, there was nothing in the bin to let you know what it was. So we had to do some modification, come up with stickers so that we could write the work order on the bin so you knew what you were doing. So again, going paperless wasn't totally without, little hiccups here and there. But again, this program allows us to basically make sure that as orders come in, material is ordered, material shows up, material is then converted into the end product. And we chose to a couple of the repetitive things like matching packing list to invoices and common reorders and things like that. We decided to invest we actually have 7 computers in the building that is basically our computer robot. So we did a software program that basically we now have an email address that all of our vendors send their invoices to, and the bot basically reads those invoices, matches them up, and enters them into the system. Same thing, once a week it goes through, prints out a list of aging, anybody that's overdue, it starts sending out emails asking them where payment is for the invoice. And that's all done automatically. We just set up a schedule and it works behind the scenes. And again, these are functions that other people that used to work here had to do in a repetitive fashion. And when you really sit down and think about it, it's kind of a waste of their skills, something very simple to do, but it was kind of a waste of their time. So we try to look for stuff like that where we can get better and make things automatic. That's really where dealing with data and dealing with automation, that's where you can really leverage things.
Yeah, so you took a publicly available software, but then you've extended beyond that to help drive the full automation that you're looking for. That's pretty awesome. Do you have, so is your IT team fairly sizable, or are you contracting out?
You're looking at one of them right here. I'm one of them,
All
and then
right.
we basically have 2 other people here that we think it's fun to and we learn some from again we have our network pretty protected here. We have a fiber. We actually have fiber going directly back to the Comcast backbone so that we reduce our chances of being hacked on a node. So we've made some decisions, and really it's just a couple of us that do it because doing the IT work isn't a full-time thing. We have 4 or 5 people here that are pretty good with computers. So we kind of pieced it all together, figured it out, pieced it together, and got it to work the way we wanted it to.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the early on hurdles that you had, throughout this whole journey of putting this whole system together?
The biggest hurdle in the beginning was getting other people to buy in. That was the biggest thing that had to be overcome. And the way that we overcame that was that we basically kind of found some low hanging fruit that we thought would enable us to show, hey, when we start this system, we start looking at things in a different way. Um, the example was is we had a job that used to take us 6 or 7 people. It took us, I want to say, it took a day and a half for them to make all 400 parts. And then we kind of showed them different ways of looking at things. Of course, we collected that data of where our starting point was at. And within 3 days, we were building the same product with one fewer person in an hour and a half. So again, those are the types of things starting out that we had to do to show people that, hey, this is how we have to look at this data, analyze what we're doing, and then change things. Now, there was a process to get to that final state over the course of a couple of days. But again, it was the toughest thing was getting one other person to buy in. And then once that other person bought in, then the team started kind of taking over. And then got us to that final point where we got things done in an hour and a half.
Yeah, getting the early wins, that's I have found that to be so critical. So I'm with you there. So okay, so you've got the system up and running, you've kind of got the process started. Well, what about the journey then? I mean, I know you talked about doing different things and continually trying to improve, but what are some of those other follow-on hurdles that you ran into?
I think that the next thing that kind of got thrown at us was now you've got that win, and you're getting more wins, changing things. You got people now. You've got the team kind of suggesting things. So the next thing comes is, wow, now you've got 100 things they want to do, and you can't possibly do the 100 things. So I think that the next thing that we kind of had to learn and got better at was we had to figure out how to categorize. And I think that's where we came up with the list of 10 things, analyzing those 100 things that got thrown at us, and then getting a list together of, hey, what are going to be the easiest and get us the most impact? Again, that was kind of the next step that started happening.
Right. Yeah, it's it's amazing how many times I've seen that where it's just the way you said it, right? When you get that win, then all of a sudden here comes a whole flood of ideas, and everybody wants to go try to do them all at once. But it was very wise of you to find a way to, effectively build your own little backlog and prioritize and just start strategically working through those. So that's awesome. So Ernie, what kind of advice would you have for our audience? These business owners that are either starting a journey similar to yours, or maybe they have an organization in place and they want to transform it as you did. What kind of advice would you have for those folks?
Well, I think you have to. You can't just kind of go at it. A lot of people, I know when you run a small or mid-sized business, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. So I think you have to take the time to basically set the structure up. Know that you need a structure for everybody to follow. And then I think you need to, collect data where you're at. What we like to say is that's why we always collect data before we start anything. So you have to come up with a master plan, collect data, and the plan should be broken down into segments because you're not going to be able to do everything all at once. You just don't have the capital. You just don't have the people or the bandwidth to do it. So basically, set up that pathway that you want to go, break it into segments, and then basically work the plan. And we have a saying: if you collect the data in the beginning, and if you're going to fail, make sure you fail fast, and then move on to the next thing. So that's what I would say. Overall, is you got to have a plan, you got to work the plan, and you got to break the plan up into segments to get to where you're going.
So, how can our audience stay in touch with you, follow your progress? and so forth? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, we have Probes Unlimited is on Twitter, LinkedIn. We do also have a Facebook page, and they can go to our website. There's updates there occasionally, update with news. They can drop me a line directly at the general email address, info@probesunlimited.com. And again, like I said, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So as we're bringing in new equipment or doing new steps or taking challenges on bit by bit, we usually try to post them so that other people can kind of see what we're doing.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on, sharing your insight with us. It's been great visiting with you. Listen, everyone that's watching, be sure to like and subscribe so we can get this out to more folks. We want to continue to share this kind of information. Look forward to new content coming out soon.